What's up, my friends? How y'all doing today? Well, my name's Carpo, in case you don't know, and I'm going to do my best in this video to try to lay out some things I've been thinking about. Forgive me, I haven't really spoken much today. I motivated myself last night to do some things this morning that I needed to get done, and it was through my intention of telling myself I was going to do that. I know I put myself in that frame of mind, and therefore I was able to receive the motivation, or rather, I guess, create the motivation to do so. And much of what I've discovered of why we do the things we do in life, the types of things we see, feel, the beliefs we have, of course, are social conditioning. But more than that, they're personal conditioning. Actually, I got this drum sitting here, and everything I'm saying is resonating off of it, coming back in my ear. It's really weird. So all the things that we do that are social conditioning, you know, things that we don't even realize we're doing and things that we do realize, are surpassed by our personal conditioning. And this, I guess, in a way would be kind of a part 3 to my hallucinations video, because after I finished that book, Hallucinations by Oliver Sacks, I went on to do a little bit more research about the different types of brain damage, like damage or pressure on the occipital lobe, which can affect the way we hallucinations, visions of faces and people, as well as other parts of the brain that are affected by certain other neurological conditions, which display the characteristics of being a hallucination-inducing problem with the brain. Now, in many cases where people hallucinate, these brain conditions, as far as we know, aren't present. But we don't know for sure, because not everybody is under a constant brain scan while they're walking around. And digging into near-death experiences, I found out that, or out-of-body experiences, I found, I've heard lots of stories of people in the operating room, who are considered dead, which are looking down on themselves. But I've also heard of people who are merely in a drug-induced state, or even high on something very simple, or not high, who also have that experience. But if it's drug-induced, you wonder, is it something that the brain is fooling itself with, such as, and it doesn't have to be a psychedelic, this can happen on opiates. People have had out-of-body experiences. So, from what I read, it turns out that when the brain is deprived of oxygen, there can be out-of-body experiences are a very common thing, because the brain is deprived of oxygen. The details of how that works are irrelevant, I'd have to look back into it, but this led me to wonder about all the people who are on the operating table considered dead, who are claiming to have out-of-body experiences, yet their brains were not provided enough oxygen. So there's a certain condition there that is met, which is something that determines a situation where a person could have a hallucination. It gets even, and this is, of course, I want to make the disclaimer that I'm not here trying to debunk all the paranormal or all out-of-body experiences or psychic connections or any of that. I'm just discussing, and I make my own conclusions, you make your own conclusions. Because I think that it's really important for me to be able to sort through and say, are any of these real and why? And it's not something that I'm just yearning to find out, it's just something that through my life I've found that, well, if there are going to be claims of an afterlife, a God, or anything like this, I'd like to dig deeper and see why people believe what they believe. And if I can convince myself that those things are true, then so be it. And I do have certain beliefs. However, they're not down solid or anything. I don't say anything for sure. I don't know. I know that everything seems to be a mirage. The psychedelic states that I've been in, where I've seen certain things in a different light and reality, and how I know serotonin is your reality chemical, if you will. It keeps your mood balanced and you perceiving your reality in a way. It's a complicated system. And there's, I always talk about dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, but there's also acetylcholine, which is the chemical that is, I guess it's inhibited while you sleep, and this is why you can dream without running out of your bed and down the hallway. And certain little incidents with our brain can cause us to, say, actually sleepwalk, things like that. And in the past, people who had seizures and things like that were considered, could be divine, holy. What I looked into were different cultures and how they react to hallucinations. In the Western culture, it's considered something that makes you crazy, so people are less likely to talk about it. But if it does happen, it can scare them because they think it's a bad thing. Or if they hear voices. Whereas people who have certain, mental conditions in other countries, say in certain African cultures, it's considered divine. It's the spirits talking to you. Yet in other cultures, they say it's okay if voices talk to you, but only at certain times. It has to be at particular times, and like of the day. And it's really strange what some people believe. But in their culture, it's considered to be a good thing. And in ours, it's something that prevents us from living a normal life, right? Well, the other night I had a really strange experience. And, I'm not going to get into the specifics of what I was doing, but let's just say I wasn't exactly wasted or anything, but I was definitely, nitrous oxide was involved, I'll just put it that way. And it was about 2 in the morning. I was laying by the river, and there was a stream going by. I have to get my orange juice because I'm thirsty. Sorry, I'll be right back. Much better. Okay, are you all excited now to hear the story? Not. Okay. So I'm laying under the stars. It was the peak of the meteor shower. And I'd taken a nitrous hit, and I was laying there, and all of a sudden, anybody who's ever done nitrous knows that in the background, everything just kind of whoosh, and it's called wah, wah, wah. There's a lot of different descriptions. But most people who are doing nitrous have a lot of random background noise, and they're at a party or whatever. For me, it's a kind of a spiritual thing, because I know that disassociatives take me to a certain place where my mind can have realities, which may be delusions because I'm in that state, but we'll get to that. As I was laying there, the first physical, actual symptom of something beyond, something that could not be created by my own mind happened. There was a river, or rather a large creek, and we were camped right next to it, and it was rather loud, in the background, white noise, right? And I'm laying there, and everybody was asleep, except me, and as the nitrous hit came on, the whole background, that white noise just faded away. I couldn't hear the creek anymore, but I could hear every little sound around me. A tiny rustling, my wife breathing, and it was pretty loud creek. And then slowly it came back. So I tried this 2 or 3 times, and every time it was the same exact thing. And I thought back to a while back when I was at a concert, Fish show, last month, and the same thing happened, except for I was in a tent, and I heard the wind blowing in I could hear the wind blowing the fabric, and I didn't realize at the time what was happening. I had actually somehow enhanced my hearing. So I dug into this deep, today, and I was finding this condition. I wrote it down here. It's called, there's a couple ones. It's called Stochatic resonance. And they found recently, and they said that people, when you play background noise, it enhances sounds rather than blocks them out. Smaller sounds can be heard better, and it goes against what you would think. But they're finding this resonance, somehow it backs up the frequency. Your brain does hear more than you could. Let's put it this way. There's a condition called hyperacusis, and that one is where people are very sensitive to sound. And some people have been known to hear things very far away, much better than the average person, which shows that the brain has the potential to hear these things. But most likely, our brain's set up with a blocking mechanism, or a limiter, if you will, that only allows us to hear certain things, and also to drown out small, insignificant things. But in certain states of mind, you can reach that level of hyper-awareness in your hearing. It's really interesting because, a lot of psychedelic researchers have talked about, especially McKenna, about how the ancient hunters used to take mushrooms, and he believed to enhance their eyesight for their hunting skills. And they might not take a large amount, but enough to enhance their ability to see, to smell. And every time I've taken psychedelics, my smell has been enhanced a lot. But, I've always just taken it as, there's some reason for it, but what do you say about it? So here we have enhanced smelling, enhanced hearing, And enhanced sight is something that a lot of people claim, but on the other hand, a lot of people say, well, you're hallucinating. You could see anything you want to see, you may think that you're seeing better. So more testing has to be done on whether people can actually see better on psychedelics, and I would imagine that will follow if it hasn't been done already, but I'm not saying that it goes one way or the other. I'm just sharing my experience, which was pretty damn interesting. I wrote down here epilepsy and migraines because those were two of the things I was studying in the hallucinations book that have caused hallucinations. But they're actually both related. A lot of people can have hyperacusis when they have those, and it's interesting because those also bring on the hallucinations. So they say that, it's very interesting, there's a part, your brainstem, that deals with processing certain things. And apparently LSD does something to the cells near that area or in that same area. And so I'm definitely not saying for sure psychedelics enhance your abilities, but I've had some very interesting experiences myself which lead me to believe that maybe there's more to this than meets the eye. Maybe it's not all delusion. So this would lead me to my journey through all these, of course, these books that I've read in the past, tons of books about psychedelics and whatnot, and done a lot of research on, as much as I can, on the actual, possible mental delusions that you could be having, as well as maybe the spiritual aspect. And you find out that different hallucinations cross different borders, sure, but people in the jungle, they tend to communicate. Let's say they take ayahuasca, which is DMT, that's orally active, and they see jungle creatures. They see the snakes, the jaguar spirit. But a lot of the same psychedelic journeys in the West, people see various different things. Maybe things that they fear, or cultural related things. So the hallucinations may be culturally related. I guess the question I was getting at was really, is there anything to being able to, use these things as a tool to increase your awareness without having to take a spiritual aspect of it? Are the signals that we're getting, the meaning that we're getting out of these things, is this something that we should just believe and utilize? People have had not just psychedelic experiences, but revelations during epileptic fits and whatnot that made them lifelong devotees and extremely faithful. There was a case in there of one guy who had a seizure, and the next day he was a full-blown Christian. He was all about it. And a couple of years later he had another seizure, and he was full-blown atheist from that day on, and his beliefs instantly changed with an experience. There was a case of one lady who had epileptic fits, and she had changed her religion 5 times. You can have such a moving experience that it gives you a lifelong devotion. And I gotta say, in the end, the bipolar disorder, this is one that I finally got into here, and it was really fascinating to see that many of the people who have it get a Jesus complex, a Messiah complex, and they tend to think that they are a messenger of God. A lot of them actually believe that they are Jesus, and that they're a second coming, and they're so dedicated to it because of the emotion behind it. Your mind, if you really have a gung-ho attitude towards something, and then you can accomplish it. And the scary thing is that, and I've run into a lot of people like this, and I'm glad that I read this, because it says that when you run into those types of people, the messiahs, and you question anything about what they are telling you or they believe, they say that they instantly label you as a demon or a spawn of Satan, one of the bad guys, somebody who's against them, or part of a grand conspiracy. And if you support them, they consider you an angel or one of the awakened or aware. And so I'm suspecting that a lot of the people that are the most gung-ho about these things maybe have a little bit of a bipolar disorder, and perhaps that experience has led their brains to think they are Messiah. And that's interesting, because we want to know if there really are messiahs out there, because there are plenty of people who believe a messiah came, Jesus and other messiahs as well, but it leads you to wonder if was there ever really a messiah? Was Jesus bipolar? Or if Jesus even existed at all, because he was an idea. But this cultural thing that we've created is, there's a guy right now, I can't remember his name, He lives in Australia, and he's claiming to be the second coming of Christ. He has a lot of followers. He gets a lot of donations, and he takes it very seriously. And I've watched several of his videos, because a while back I made a video talking shit about him, basically, because I feel like people are being cheated. But who am I to diss their comfort? Because some of the responses I've had from my insulting, or calling him out rather, were that, well, even if he's not, he makes people happy. Isn't that okay? I mean, and those are real responses. And I would say, no. If it's on a lying premise, I don't think it's fair. But who am I to say people can't delude themselves? I'm sure I do it in my own ways. And so I'd ultimately just leave you with the idea that to each his own. And this is what I'm really trying to work out the details on these things in order to better understand people. Because if I run into somebody who has a particular disorder, of course that doesn't, just because they act a certain way, you can't label them a certain way. We all have a little bit of everything. I've looked at conditions for so many things. I'm sure I've got a little OCD, a little ADD, even a little Tourette's syndrome. I mean, we all have a little bit of something, so nobody's perfect. But you just sit on that teeter-totter there, wondering if deluding yourself is a healthy thing or not, because many people who have extreme beliefs are very happy. However, a lot of them are more upset trying to hang on to that and prove themselves, and that's a tough one. It's kind of like those who are poor suffer because they don't have enough money, but on the other hand, they actually stress less because they don't have so much money to protect. The more you've built up and the more you've tried to define about life, the more resistance that you'll meet when people call it out or disagree. And if your beliefs are dependent on other people believing, then it will always be a problem. So I still have my faith that there's a mystery out there. I mean, how can you not? Look at what life is. Everything is just electricity. Everything is energy. That's all it is. They say that there is no empty space. All of space is just dark matter, or dark energy. What does it matter? You can't label even half of the... We can't even define things through science. I watched a thing today about how many actual research papers are flawed and the statistical reasons why they're flawed. It's astronomical. It's just... And then a lot of the research that's done in the future is based off of those preconceived notions that those are correct. And there are certain journals that won't publish a re-researched subject because they want to keep it fresh and new. Science has turned into a game in a lot of regions. And there are a lot of serious scientists out there, and I'm definitely not saying science is a bad thing, but science can only take us so far if we're going to use the approach we're using right now. Unfortunately, we just can't seem to get the same results on any tests. I mean, there are a lot of things we know for sure, but things like the beginning of the universe, the Big Bang, missing equations, Einstein's equation, and that's why there were certain names given to him, to some of the equations, because they knew they were flawed, but the numbers just had to fit. They had to work, you know? And what have we really learned that's helped us? The only things that we've actually benefited from are like these, you know, new materials. We've benefited from learning how to extract certain materials to create things, but then we ask ourselves, what in particular that we've created are really necessities? And you start to see that humans were better off without all this technology, that it hasn't really furthered us, other than things like vaccines to prolong our life. But if that life is so busy and we're working to retire, then, you know. So I'm just throwing out ideas. I think each individual knows their own limits of what they're willing to tolerate in their life, or what they're willing to accept or believe or not believe. Nobody has any reason to tell anybody what not to believe or what to believe. And that's what makes life interesting, is to go around and look at all the different people and why they think the way they do. And I think understanding why people delude themselves is important, so we don't all get caught up in believing other people. Because believing individual people is one of the single biggest problems that we have. I guess I can't say one of the single biggest. One of the biggest problems we have is people following individuals. Even guys like David Icke. I understand what a lot of the stuff he says is true, he started to add a little, I guess, positive spin to some of the things he says, but that's at the end after he talks about reptilian overlords from the fourth dimension and, you know, observing us from the hollow moon. What do you tell the people who believe that? They want to believe it. And to me, there's just not enough evidence to believe one guy's bullshit. And it's always one guy who can lead tens of thousands of people to their own demise. It's one guy who can go to battle with a bad idea and send all his troops to war and kill them, you know? It's one guy whose ego could get damaged by some other leader, so he invades that country. It's always one guy. There's dictators that rule countries, and there's dictators that rule people's minds. So take a general consensus view of the world around us and utilize that to try to... This is why majority rules. It's because there are so many delusions out there that we have to take a consensus vote. And people have to educate themselves on individual things so they know what they're talking about. And if they don't know what they're talking about, to research it as much as they can. But then you research something and find out that the science may be flawed. What do you do? And at a point, you just got to use your heart. Do the best you can. It's what we got, people. It's what we got. You just want to live a happy life. Don't worry about what other people believe or don't believe. Just get an all-around picture of the world. That's how I do it anyway. Guess I gotta go. It's been a long-ass video, so I'll talk to y'all later.